In the Upper West Side of New York City, where historic brownstones stand interspersed with modern skyscrapers, Ida Yildiz curled up on the worn sofa in the cramped rental apartment she shared with a few friends. The dim desk lamp illuminated a book on ancient Greek architecture, but her eyes couldn't focus. A few hours ago, Ida's world had come crashing down. 19 years old, orphaned from a young age after a tragic accident, Ida was used to fending for herself. She didn't have a wealthy family or a solid support system. The only things she had were a sharp intellect, relentless diligence, and a burning dream to become a talented landscape architect. That dream wasn't easy to pursue. University tuition in the US was a colossal burden. But Ida had found a ray of light, a full scholarship for outstanding students from the Bolat Holdings Foundation, a giant architecture and construction corporation headquartered right in the heart of Manhattan. She had applied, gone through numerous challenging interview rounds, and waited with a pounding heart every day. And finally, the fateful email arrived 6 months ago, confirming she was one of the very few recipients of this prestigious scholarship. It wasn't just money, it was the key to unlocking her future, the recognition for years of hard study, the promise of a better life. Ida had lived in immense happiness and gratitude ever since. She had meticulously planned her upcoming courses at the renowned university, started researching campus life, and even dreamt of the day she would step into the glamorous offices of Bolat Holdings as a future intern. But then, this afternoon, another email arrived. Subject: Important update regarding the Bolat Holdings Foundation scholarship. Ida opened it, thinking it was information about enrollment dates or necessary procedures. Each line felt like a knife twisting in her heart. Due to internal strategic restructuring and changes in financial priorities, the Bolat Holdings Foundation was forced to indefinitely suspend the full scholarship program starting from the next academic year. All scholarships that had been awarded, including Ida's, were canceled. The email ended with a sterile apology for the inconvenience. Ida reread the email, unable to believe her eyes. Suspend? Canceled? After receiving confirmation? After she had turned down other opportunities? After she had placed all her hopes here? Tears began to blur her vision. This wasn't an inconvenience. This was devastation. Her future, her dream, all turned to dust with just a few cold lines. She scrolled down to the end of the email, searching for the person responsible for this cruel decision. The signature appeared clearly. Serkan Bolat, Chairman and CEO, Bolat Holdings. Serkan Bolat. A name that resonated in the architecture and business world as a cold genius. A veritable robot who had elevated Bolat Holdings to new heights, but was also known for his ruthlessness and autocratic nature in business. Ida had never met him, only knew him through newspapers and rumors. Now, to Ida, that name was synonymous with the one who had stolen everything from her. A liar. A person who had sown hope only to trample it mercilessly. The initial heartbreak quickly turned into intense anger. His company, his wealth, all built on the hard work and dreams of people like her, people who needed a chance to prove themselves. And then he, with just a nod, could destroy it all. Ida felt like a fire was burning in her chest. She wanted him to know what it felt like to lose everything. She wanted him to pay. A crazy idea flashed in Ida's mind: revenge. Not a grand, complex scheme. Just a small, symbolic act to express her rage, to scratch his perfect facade, just as he had done to her life. His car. She vaguely remembered reading about Serkan Bolat's collection of luxury cars. Scratching one of his prized vehicles would be a small blow, but a satisfying one. She quickly put on her jacket, grabbed an old spare key from the hook. Destination: the private parking garage of Bolat Holdings in the financial district. Though it was already dark, the adrenaline surging through Ida made her feel fearless. She took the subway down to Lower Manhattan, walking briskly through the streets lined with towering, glittering buildings. The Bolat Holdings building loomed before her, a symbol of power and wealth that Ida now only saw with hatred. She loitered around the underground parking area, looking for a way to slip in. Fortunately, a security guard was struggling with a trash can not far away, and a side gate for employees was temporarily ajar. Ida squeezed through the gap, her heart pounding. She needed to find the executive parking section. Venturing deeper inside, the space was eerily silent and luxurious. Shiny, expensive cars were parked neatly under the neon lights. Ida strained her eyes, searching for the most talked-about car, the sleek black sedan that Serkan Bolat often used. And then she saw it, parked in the most central spot, gleaming like a black diamond. Clutching the key in her hand, sweat beaded on her palm. She approached the car, feeling both afraid and determined. This was her only chance. She took a deep breath, aimed at the glossy black body, and prepared to make a long, deep scratch. Just as Ida raised her hand, a cold, deep voice rang out behind her. "What are you doing here?" Ida jumped and spun around. Standing there was a tall man in a sharp suit, with a cold, angular face and piercing gray-blue eyes that regarded her with suspicion. There was no mistaking him. It was Serkan Bolat. Was he still at the office at this hour? I was just... Ida stammered, the key still poised in her hand. Serkan Bolat looked down at the key, then at Ida's face, flushed with anger and fear. His gaze grew even colder. "What were you planning to do to my car?" Ida realized there was no turning back. Fear gave way to rage. "Your car? You ask what I was planning to do to your car? What did you do to my future?" She spat out, tears welling up again from the injustice. "You canceled my scholarship. The scholarship I sacrificed everything for. You're a liar." Serkan Bolat frowned, clearly not understanding what she was talking about. "What scholarship?" "I don't know who you are." "You know perfectly well," Ida shouted, losing control of her emotions. "You're Serkan Bolat. You signed that email. The email that ruined my life." As the two faced off intensely, hurried footsteps echoed. Two security guards, perhaps alerted by Ida's or Serkan's presence, ran over. "Mr. Bolat, what's going on?" one asked. "This young lady trespassed and intends to damage my property," Serkan Bolat replied, his voice firm. "Stop right there, hands up." The other security guard pulled out handcuffs, approaching Ida. In a moment of panic and intense anger, Ida didn't think. She stepped back, instinctively swinging her arm, not wanting to be caught. The key was still in her hand. Serkan Bolat reacted quickly, grabbing Ida's wrist to prevent her from resisting or doing something even more foolish. The struggle happened in a flash. The security guard tried to restrain Ida. Serkan Bolat was holding her wrist tightly. The handcuffs were pulled out in the chaos, perhaps due to the collision, a clumsy movement, or simply the irony of fate. A click sound rang out. Everyone froze. Ida felt a cold metal object tighten around her left wrist. Serkan Bolat also frowned, looking down at his hand. The handcuffs were locked tightly around Ida's left wrist and his right wrist. Silence fell. The two security guards stood with their mouths open in astonishment. Serkan Bolat looked at the handcuffs, then at Ida, his eyes shifting from coldness to disbelief. Ida looked at the handcuffs, then at Serkan Bolat, a mix of shock and anger. They were handcuffed together, the man who had stolen her future and the person she had planned to get revenge on. In the silent underground parking garage of Bullet Holdings, destiny had bound them together in a way no one could have predicted. The hostile confrontation had taken an entirely unexpected turn, opening up a series of ridiculous and awkward events ahead. Serkan Bolat was the one to break the silence, his voice full of annoyance and a hint of despair. "What the hell is this?" He tugged his hand slightly, the handcuffs tightened, making Ida wince in pain. "You think I don't know what you did?" Ida retorted instinctively, forgetting their current predicament. "You think I intentionally handcuffed myself to you?" Serkan growled, looking at the handcuffs as if they were an alien object. He turned to the two security guards standing frozen. "Please, unlock this immediately." The two guards fumbled for the key, but their hands were shaking. They tried several times, but the handcuffs wouldn't budge. Neither Serkan nor Ida was cooperating, each trying to pull their hand away, only making the situation worse. "It won't open, Mr. Bolat," one guard stammered. It seems to be jammed." Serkan Bolat glared at the handcuffs, then at Ida, who was a mix of angry and amused by his helpless expression. "Jammed? Are you kidding me? We'll call the technical team." "Too late," Serkan interrupted. "I have an important meeting. Very important." He looked at his watch, his face growing more and more frustrated. He couldn't go to a meeting with a strange girl handcuffed to him. This was ridiculous, unprofessional, utterly... Serkan Bolat had never been in a situation as absurd and humiliating as this. He looked at Ida, his eyes full of exasperated assessment. This girl, with her messy hair and swollen eyes from crying, looked like a total mess. But this mess was currently shackled to him. "Listen," Serkan said in a firm voice, trying to maintain composure. "We can't stay here, and I can't miss the meeting. Ada looked at him, her anger momentarily pushed aside by bewilderment and a touch of curiosity about this bizarre situation. "What are you going to do? You have to come with me," Serkan Bolat declared, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Ida's jaw dropped. "Go with you? To your meeting? Are you crazy? I don't have a choice." Serkan snapped, holding up their joined hands. "Unless you want us to spend the night here or go to the police station to explain why we're handcuffed together in my parking garage. And I assure you, neither of those options is good for either of us." Ida thought quickly. Go with him? That was insane. But the police? A scandal? Losing any chance of getting a job anywhere later? She was a student, not a criminal, and she certainly didn't want to stay here with him for another second. But "I can't drive," Ida said, realizing a practical problem. Serkan Bolat's eyes widened. "You can't drive? We'll take a taxi or call a private car and explain to the driver why we're handcuffed." Serkan bit his lip, clearly trying to suppress his anger. He looked at the two security guards. "Absolute secrecy about this. I'll handle it later." The two nodded frantically. "Let's go," Serkan said, gently pulling Ida towards the exit. Ida stumbled after him, still in shock. A few hours ago, she was just a student who had lost her scholarship. Now, she was handcuffed to her enemy and heading to an important business meeting. Her life had taken an utterly unpredictable turn, all starting with an old key and an impulsive act of revenge in Serkan Bolat's underground parking garage in glorious New York. They stepped outside, blending into the bustling crowd of Manhattan night. The bright lights seemed to mock their ironic predicament. A cold architectural genius and a student who had lost everything, shackled together by a foolish accident. They didn't know that this involuntary bond was just the beginning of a complex and tumultuous relationship, where initial hostility would slowly give way to completely unexpected feelings. It was 5 a.m. in New York, the city still shrouded in a hazy darkness, but the hustle had already begun to creep through every street. Ada and Serkan, still awkwardly handcuffed together, sat in a luxurious car speeding down Fifth Avenue, heading towards the fateful meeting. The silence between them was as taut as a wire, only occasionally broken by the irritating clinking sound of the metal cuffs whenever one of them moved. The meeting last night had been a skillfully disguised disaster. The client, Mr. Altambe, a demanding real estate developer, was clearly surprised to see Serkan Bolat show up with an unfamiliar young woman, handcuffed. Serkan's brilliant improvisation miraculously saved the situation. He had spun an unexpected tale. Ida was his fiancée, a talented but somewhat eccentric landscape architect, and the handcuff incident was part of a prank or some romantic misunderstanding. The story was so absurd that it somehow sounded strangely convincing, or perhaps Mr. Altanbey simply didn't want trouble with an important client like Bolat Holdings. In any case, the deal was salvaged, but at no small cost. On the way back, Serkan had made a proposal, essentially an ultimatum. To quell the rumors that were sure to spread from the handcuff incident and to solidify a stable image for the company, especially in the face of the media constantly digging into his private life, they would pretend to be engaged. A contract would be drawn up, clearly stipulating the duration and terms. In return, Serkan would guarantee Ida an equivalent, or even better, scholarship at any university she desired and an assistant position at Bolat Holdings for her to gain practical work experience. Ida initially vehemently objected. Pretend to be engaged to the man who had ruined her future? It was ridiculous and humiliating, but Serkan presented irrefutable arguments. The handcuff incident would cause her significant trouble if not explained properly. Her reputation as a serious student would be ruined. Furthermore, the offer of a new scholarship was too appealing for a girl with nothing but her dream. Finally, out of helplessness and a bit of practical calculation, Ida reluctantly agreed. A few days later, the contract was signed. The handcuffs were removed after the technical team worked tirelessly. Ada moved into an apartment arranged by the company, more convenient for commuting. She officially became Serkan Bolat's fiancée and personal assistant. Ida's life revolved around Serkan, attending events with him, managing his schedule, even dealing with his family, especially his mother, Mrs. Aydin, a fussy, aristocratic woman who always seemed difficult with her. Despite starting with a fake contract, the time spent working and living together, even if just acting in front of others, gradually allowed Ida and Serkan to see different sides of each other. Ida discovered that behind the cold and rational exterior of the robot, Serkan was a lonely man, constantly under pressure from work and family, and carrying deep-seated wounds. He wasn't as emotionless as she had thought. He paid attention to small details, had a hidden warm heart, and even had surprisingly humorous moments. Conversely, Serkan was also impressed by Ida's sincerity, passion, and resilient will. She brought brightness and a pleasant chaos into his neatly organized life. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, challenge him, and show him a world outside of blueprints and meetings. From staying up late together to finish an urgent project, to the awkward family dinners where they had to act convincingly, or the rare moments of relaxation when they accidentally shared a smile or a look of understanding, real feelings began to blossom between them, transcending the boundaries of the contract. The fake engagement party was held at a luxurious venue in Manhattan, attended by New York's elite. Ida, in a stunning dress, played the perfect fiancé. Serkan, wearing an elegant suit, looked at her with eyes that only the most perceptive could tell were not entirely acting. Beneath the facade, an invisible but strong bond was being forged between them. A public kiss in front of the media, initially just part of the act, sent tremors through both of their hearts. They realized they were genuinely falling in love. However, this fragile happiness did not last. Ida had two close friends who were always by her side, the cheerful, naive Mello and the sharp, practical Fifi. One evening, Ida was on the phone with Mello, expressing her confusion about her true feelings for Serkan, but also lamenting the complexity and pressure of this fake marriage. "Sometimes, I just want it all to end, so I can just be myself," Ida said over the phone, unaware that Serkan was coincidentally overhearing part of the conversation from the next room. He only heard the phrase, "want it all to end," and misunderstood that Ida was just counting down the days until the contract ended, that her feelings for him were fake. Doubt and hurt crept into Serkan's heart. At the same time, another disaster struck. Mello, in an attempt to help Ada, or perhaps simply being clumsy, accidentally sent an email containing a crucial and highly confidential blueprint for a major project from Ada's computer, which she used for work, to the address of Serkan's main competitor, Mr. Khan Karadog. Khan Karadog used this blueprint to steal the project. The leak was a severe blow to Serkan and Bolat Holdings. When Serkan discovered the email was sent from Ida's account, his anger and disappointment erupted. He confronted Ida, accusing her of collaborating with the rival, or at least being extremely careless. Ida, heartbroken by Serkan's misunderstanding about the phone call, and simultaneously shocked and feeling terribly guilty about Mello's mistake, however unintentional, couldn't clearly explain everything in the heat of their shared anger and disappointment. The lack of trust, accumulated misunderstandings, and the serious consequences of the blueprint leak pushed them apart. Bitter words were exchanged. Unspoken secrets weighed heavily. The fake relationship that began with a contract now shattered, dragging down the burgeoning real feelings with it. Serkan, feeling betrayed on multiple levels, declared an end to the contract and the relationship. Ida, with a broken heart, agreed. They parted in pain, each returning to their own lives, or trying to. Ada quit her job at Bolat Holdings, trying to forget Serkan and start anew with the new scholarship, which Serkan had kept his promise about. Serkan returned to his cold exterior, burying himself in work. The time apart was agonizing. Ida realized that no matter if Serkan was a robot or the man who had indirectly caused her pain, she still loved him deeply. She missed his presence, his rare smile, the way he cared for her in his own way. But then, a more devastating truth was revealed. As Ida delved deeper into her parents' past and the accident that took their lives, she discovered a horrifying connection to Bolat Holdings. It wasn't just the scholarship fund being canceled. The very company that built the collapsed building where her parents worked and died was Bolat Holdings. And the person responsible for the collapse, who had ignored safety regulations, was none other than Serkan Bolat's father, Mr. Amit Bolat, the founder of the corporation. This truth was a terrible blow, creating a tragic abyss between Ida and Serkan. Their love, already fragile after the breakup, now faced a devastating family tragedy. Ida couldn't believe that the man she loved had a direct link to her parents' death. Serkan also crumbled upon learning the truth about his father's past actions and their impact on the woman he loved. This tragedy pushed them even further apart. Love was overshadowed by pain, guilt, and unanswered questions. Would their love be strong enough to overcome this dark past, Could Ida forgive, not Serkan, but his family, for the cruel twist of fate that brought them together only to reveal a devastating truth? Reconciliation seemed impossible, until Ida realized that her love for Serkan still burned brightly in her heart, stronger than the pain and the bitter truth. She knew she couldn't live without him, no matter how cruel the past was. Determined to find happiness again, Ida began the journey of reconciliation. Facing the remaining misunderstandings, opposition from family, and unhealed wounds, hoping that their love was strong enough to overcome everything. 5 years had passed since that fateful night in the underground parking garage, and the painful truth about Ida's parents' death was revealed. 5 years was long enough for wounds that seemed impossible to heal to partially scar over, long enough for life to continue with unexpected turns. Ida, now a talented young landscape architect, had built her own career at a small but reputable firm in Brooklyn. She had worked incredibly hard to overcome the tragedy of the past, though its shadow was always present. She had cut off all contact with Serkan Bolat, trying to forget the man who had once been her enemy, her lover, and was now tragically linked to his family. Serkan Bolat was still Serkan Bolat, the CEO of Bolat Holdings, cold, rational, and always immersed in work. The design leak and the truth about his father had caused a major crisis in both his career and his personal life. He had struggled with the legacy of his father's guilt, taking steps to rectify the consequences and regain trust. He had never stopped thinking about Ida, about how they had loved each other and how tragedy had torn them apart. The void Ida left in his life was a dull ache that no architectural project could fill. Their reunion happened on a spring afternoon in Central Park. Ida was holding the hand of a little girl about 4 years old, whose curly chestnut hair bounced in the wind, her large, round eyes the exact same gray-blue as Serkan's. It was Kira's. Ida had discovered she was pregnant not long after breaking up with Serkan. In the chaos and pain, compounded by the burden of the truth about his father, Ida decided to raise the child alone. She didn't want Serkan to bear this burden, or for Kiraz to grow up in the shadow of the complex past between their two families. Serkan was walking in the park after a stressful day at work. He saw a little girl running and playing, and his heart clenched when he saw those familiar eyes and smile. He looked at the woman accompanying the child. It was Ida. Ida saw him too. In the moment their eyes met, time seemed to stop. All the pain, love, regret, and complex emotions flooded back. Kiraz, innocent, ran over to Serkan, looking up at him with curiosity. "Who are you, mister?" Serkan knelt down to look at Kiraz, his throat tight. He looked at Ida, a silent question clear in his eyes. Ida, though nervous, nodded slightly in confirmation. Serkan Bolat, the cold robot, nearly collapsed. He had a daughter with the woman he had never stopped loving. Kiraz's appearance changed everything. Serkan was initially confused, angry that Ida had kept this truth from him. But looking at Kiraz, all anger melted away. The love for his daughter overwhelmed him, strong and sudden. He wanted to be a part of her life. He wanted to make up for the years he had missed. Kiraz became the miraculous bridge between Ida and Serkan. For their child, they were forced to face each other, to communicate with each other. The initial awkward encounters gradually became more comfortable as they took Kiraz to the park together, attended her school performances, or simply sat side by side watching her sleep. Serkan, who had always been distant and rational, revealed the gentle, patient side of a father. Ida watched him interact with Kiraz, saw the genuine love in his eyes, and the defense walls she had built up over the years slowly crumbled. They talked, a lot, about the past, about the misunderstandings, about the pain from the accident, and about the love that neither of them had ever stopped feeling for each other. Serkan frankly confronted the truth about his father, acknowledged his family's responsibility, and committed to continuing to do the right thing to atone. He didn't shy away from the past, but he also didn't let it define their future. Their love, tempered by trials and time, was now deeper and more steadfast than ever. They didn't just love each other because of the initial spark, but also because of their growth, the difficult forgiveness, and the sacred bond of their daughter. Kiraz wasn't just their daughter. She was a symbol of hope, proof that from ruins, beautiful things can still grow. One evening, under the glittering lights of Brooklyn Bridge Park, Serkan knelt before Ida. There was no contract, no acting, just a sincere heart. Ida, his voice trembling, "I know we've been through so much. I know the past is painful, but you and Kiraz are my future. I can't live without either of you. Will you? Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Ida's face, but they were tears of happiness. She nodded. Yes, Serkan, I will. Their wedding was simple but warm, with only family and closest friends. Ida was no longer the fake fiancée in a lavish dress, but the happiest bride, holding Serkan's hand, who looked at her with eyes full of love and gratitude. Kiraz, in a tiny princess dress, bounced around, not fully understanding the significance of the moment, but her smile was the greatest blessing for her parents. The story ended with a picture of a happy family. A few years after the wedding, Serkan and Ida's small family welcomed a new member, a healthy baby boy. They moved to a spacious house with a garden in the New York suburbs, where Ida could fully indulge in her passion for landscape architecture, and Serkan could find peace with his family after stressful work hours. Kiraz became a loving big sister. The painful past was still a part of them, but it was no longer a burden weighing them down. They had learned to live with it, draw lessons from it, and cherish the present, building a fulfilling future based on love, forgiveness, and the clear laughter of their children. They, Ida and Serkan, finally found true happiness, a garden of love blooming from the soil of tragedy and misunderstanding, right in the heart of the vast and dynamic United States. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more updates. Don't forget to share it with your friends too. Let's spread the word together. Thanks for the support.